I watched SpongeBob as a kid in 1999 and in the early 2000s. After the first movie came out in 2004, my interest in the series fell off. The last new episode I remember seeing was Best Day Ever. That was in 2006. And I think I have seen some episodes from later seasons, but they're not the same as OG SpongeBob. For those of you that have never heard of SpongeBob SquarePants, where have you been? SpongeBob is Nickelodeon's Mickey Mouse at this point. It doesn't just represent a show. The show was created by marine science teacher and animator Steven Hillenburg. He also was creative director for Rocko's Modern Life. I don't want to break down the development of the show, but you need to understand how important and how influential the show is. It is the 5th longest running American animated series of all time. At the time I write this, it has been running for 24 years as an animated series, quarter of a century, and it appears Nick has no plans to cancel it. Another part of the reason I don't want to talk about the show is I don't want to talk about the drop off in quality or the fact that right after Steven Hillenburg died, they immediately greenlit spin-offs that they knew Steven rejected. After that, you can see a drop in quality and lean into making it a children's show with cartoon violence and over-the-top segments that aren't really meant for anyone. Some of you younger kids might not like that statement, or you may say I'm repeating other people's criticisms. But I remember the change in direction happening and saying that I didn't like newer episodes even in 2006. This is a show that has no intent of ending anytime soon, but I hope Nick brings in some people that understand what made the first seasons of the show so great. Seasons 1 through 3 get a 10, seasons 4 through 6 get a 7, and my rating for any season after that could just be a 3 out of 10. But you didn't come here to hear my opinions about the show. The original release date of this game was October 29, 2003 in North America. This was not the first SpongeBob game. It was actually the 8th game made using SpongeBob. But this was only the 3rd console release. The first console release was Super Sponge on PlayStation and Revenge of the Flying Dutchman on PS2 and GameCube. The console versions of Battle for Bikini Bottom were developed by Heavy Iron Studios for the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. Vicarious Visions made the GBA version, and Awe Games made the PC version, which is apparently different from every other version of the game. The game was made using renderware and published by THQ. At the time of its release, the game got mixed reviews, with reviewers calling it a generic platformer where you just collect, jump, and kill, also complaining about the poor hit detection. But how does a game like this get remade? You can thank the speedrunning community for that. As time went on, the mainstream forgot about this game. But speedrunners are always looking for the next game, the next challenge, and as the mainstream forgot, the speedrunners were building an environment that showed what can be done with this game. That brought attention back to the game, and people like me showed that if they made this game, we would buy it to remember our childhood, or so parents could play it with their kids. So SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is a remake of a 2003 game in Unreal 4, developed by Purple Lamp Studios, released on June 23rd, 2020 for the Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and Windows. For Stadia, it would come out December 8th, 2020. This game was also released on Android and iOS January 21st, 2021, and Luna September 9th, 2021. This game came out on everything under the sun, so you can literally play it on almost anything now. If you want to play this game, you have no excuse not to. This was Purple Lamp's first major title since 2015, SpongeBob Hero Pants, and the first game since the death of Steven Hillenburg in 2018. Development of this game started in 2018 when THQ Nordic wanted to revive older game titles. People speculated on whether or not they were remaking this one or one of the other SpongeBob games. The developer used third-party mods made by a Brazilian modder to look over the extract level data from Heavy Iron's back catalog. Purple Lamp was later contacted by that modder and added them in the credits through a patch. That is the craziest thing that happened in the development. But if you love this game on the PS2, GameCube, or Xbox, they literally just remade the game in a modern engine, and it's not a remaster, it is a remake. The code is actually different, and it's in a different engine. The people that say this is a remaster, you need to learn the difference between a remaster and a remake. This is one of the ways to remake a game, but with Dead Space 2023, there are other ways to remake a game. It depends on the developers and what they want to do. Purple Lamp wanted to keep the original levels in all their good and bad, but they did also fix a few bugs in the game, and some speedrunners will say they ruined speedrunning in the remake. This game does not have a deep story, so if you want that, this is not the game for you. Plankton, evil genius and owner of the Chum Bucket, has built a machine to make robots to try and steal the Krabby Patty's secret formula. But Plankton forgot to set the machines to obey, the robots escape, chaos ensues. Back at SpongeBob's house, he and Patrick are playing with robots and horses, but they get bored and make a wish using the magic wishing shell to make the robots real. The next morning when Patrick and SpongeBob wake up and robots are trashing Bikini Bottom, there isn't much of a story. So if you don't like that, there's not much that can be done to change that. There are events that happen, but just like most platformers of the era, it was planned and will always happen the same way no matter what. But I do like SpongeBob, especially this era in the first few seasons. Though if you don't like it, I can't blame you. I've always understood why some people can't stand SpongeBob. Even though some of you just don't like him because you believe he promotes a alternative lifestyle that's fancy for these right-wingers think he's gay. Not to get too political, but people have said the same thing about Abbott and Costello. But if you want to hear something great, Joe Pesci was in a comedy duo in the 70s with Frank Vincent performing as Vincent and Pesci, directly inspired by Abbott and Costello. But back on topic, you will run into other characters like Squidward, Mrs. Puff, Mr. Krabs, the Flying Dutchman, along with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. And yes, John White voices Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man and is not as good as Clancy Brown or Ernest Borgnine, but fine as it is. But you need to understand there's a very basic plot to carry a platformer like this. It's not a giant RPG, it's a platformer from 2003, and the story does what it is meant to do, carry you from one obstacle to the next. I don't want to sound rude or anything, but this game looks like it was made in Unreal 4. In all reality, they could have used basically any engine to remake this game, but the team probably had worked in Unreal, and maybe the way they pulled level design was why it was made in Unreal. One of the good things, and for some people bad things that this version of the game adds, is more bright and vibrant colors that really pop. To this day, there are so many games where the color feels drowned out or everything feels very dark and dreary, but in this game, the colors are bright and varied. There are areas that are darker, that shows the difference in each area, and with all the movement in this game, that shows personality. But most of the time, the characters have the same face on for most of the game, and they repeat the same phrase over and over again. Nothing in this game is visually spectacular, but there are areas that look really good for what they are, and that's what can be said about the visuals in the game. There are areas that look great, but that's not because of the engine. It's just the setting, like SpongeBob's Dream or the Flying Dutchman level. The music can have some very good tunes, but just like the lines that the characters say, a lot of the songs are the same song for the entire time you're in one section of a level, and a lot of the tracks are reused. I do really like that every time you start a game at the title screen, it plays the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. That's a nice touch, kind of tries to get you in the mood for the game. I don't want to sound generic, but this is a platformer from the early 2000s. There were a lot of people still trying to copy Super Mario 64, and you can feel that all over this game. The few abilities that you get in the game are meant to add variety, and they do add a little, but most of the time you're going to be running, jumping, and hitting. Every now and again you'll have to use the bubble bowl to progress, and at the very end of the game you get the bubble rocket that you can control in the air. The bubble rocket is probably my favorite and least favorite thing in the game. It can be fun, but it also can be frustrating. This is not a difficult game. It has some annoying sections, but nothing I would call hard, like sections of Crash Bandicoot. All of the levels are pretty well laid out, so you don't get lost. The other collectibles in the game besides the golden spatulas shiny objects that are your currency that you can trade with Mr. Krabs for a spatula. There's also Patrick's lost socks. Every tin you find, he'll give you a spatula. It shouldn't be a problem beating the game, but 100%ing it is also not that hard. Just on Xbox, 20% of users have most of the achievements in this game. On Steam, it's pretty similar. If you just need a game to play or just want something for your kid to play, this is it. But you do need to remember this has children's humor from the early 2000s, so there are some adult jokes in the game, similar to how there is a key party going on in How the Grinch Stole Christmas in 2000. Your kid won't get it, but that joke wasn't put in there for your kid. But I need to mention I've played through this game twice, once on PC and once on Xbox, and in both versions of the game I ran into bugs. Most of them were with the physics, but some of them were the models clipping through things you have to jump on to progress. Every now and again you can play as Sandy and Patrick, and I left them until the end because Patrick is SpongeBob, but he can't use the bubble moves, and his belly flop is better than SpongeBob, and he can carry items to solve puzzles and fight enemies. But you'll use it mostly for puzzles. Sandy can't belly flop at all. She can use her lasso to swing from these Texas symbols, kill enemies with her lasso, and glide. Some people say Sandy is the best character in the game to play as. I still say SpongeBob is a good balance of all the characters, especially after the bubble rocket. This was never going to be Game of the Year, and the studio knew that. They just wanted to give the best game with the IP in 2003, and the game was successful or nostalgic enough to get a remaster. And I think there are some reviewers that gave it a low score because it is a SpongeBob game. This game is not a 2 out of 10, even a 4 is too low for this game. Is it an amazing game that is the best in its genre? No, but it's a platformer that does everything that it says it's going to do. You play as SpongeBob and his friends in Bikini Bottom, and you can see everything that was in the show in 2003. Jellyfish Fields, the beach, the Mermalair, Sandy's Street Home, the Krusty Krab, but there have not been that many good SpongeBob games. All that being said, if you like platformers or you're a completionist that's looking for an easy game, this is your game. But if that doesn't sound like you, you can skip this one. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. It does what it says it's going to do. If nothing else, look for it whenever it's on sale. That would be a good time to buy it. But those are just my thoughts. Tell me what you think below. Did you play this game growing up? Did you only play it after this remaster? Do you like SpongeBob? Or are you one of those people that just hate him? Just leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more reviews.